Our guest for this hour is already seated. And the Devolution conference comes to an end, actually, today. This afternoon, folks are finishing with what has been a week of deliberations and discussions, planning for the next 5 years in this new administration. Kipruto Arap Kirwa is a politician and former cabinet minister, and he joins us this hour to have a conversation about what devolution ought to look like getting into these years. Mweshima, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you doing?
Very well. I thank God for it.
Indeed.
Yes.
Very good to have you here this morning. And even as we get into these conversations, CT has been giving us proverbs this week from Niger, and it's an interesting one today. CT, take it away.
A man who lives on the banks of the Niger should not wash his hands with spittle.
Okay. That's very interesting.
What do you make of it?
Well, I take it that if you have plenty, really don't scramble for nothing. I don't know.
Isn't that another proverb in itself?
That's a proverb in itself, yes. But it's also, see, this is the thing. A proverb within a proverb is actually a response to the previous problem, because the proverb then explains the other proverb.
And interesting, you're talking about Niger, which is crosses two countries. I think Nigeria, I think Ghana, and Niger.
It is.
Yeah, that river. And that is where the coup took place the other day.
Yes, it did.
It is. It is for that reason actually that we chose this country.
Yes.
Because it highlights something that is not just, we talk about it as a West African issue, but you realize the northern part of Africa has had similar issues. But we then ask the question, is it what we saw in the 70s and 80s, coups and counter-coups, or what is it that we're seeing in these coups? Because it's not just a coup. We're seeing a loud statement being made, more so by the Francophone countries, with regards to their former colonial masters. So it's not what we saw before. This is something very, very different.
I think it's very interesting. We are treating the symptoms of the problem.
Yes.
Fundamentally, and it's the entire continent of Africa. Perhaps one or two countries may not have had coups, but most of them have had either attempted coups or some that succeeded.
Yeah,
true.
No, fundamentally, one of the major problems in Africa, from my own study, is that the ruling elite, they are complacent, and they assume when they take office, they assume now they own the country. And that is where the problem starts. The other issue is weak institutions in terms of structures, whether it is political parties, whether it is judiciary, whether it is the executive itself, whether it is parliament, which is supposed to legislate and represent the people. When they are weak, they weaken the very confidence of the people that take them to those offices. I remember when I was first member of parliament, we were a department within the office of the president. And we used to draw allowances and salaries from the office of the president.
Okay.
There was no parliamentary service commission. And therefore, we are an arm of the executive. And in Kenya, in many ways, when you talk of the government, people think of the administration of the day.
Yes.
They don't realize the government is the three arms: the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, where the executive is just the administration arm of all institutions of government. Otherwise, parliament is also supposed to be part of government. That's why you realize even speaker and other officials, whether it is minority or majority, they drive in GK vehicles because they are part and parcel of the government. But that separation has been lost in the minds of Kenyans because of the practice of the administration of the day, trying to make the other institutions subservient to them or subordinate to them.
Is it possible, from where you sit, even because practice essentially then forms, as you practice something over time, it then becomes habitual, and that then becomes, in the minds of those who watch or participate, the way it is supposed to be, becomes a norm, because norms then are funded or fueled by practice. So in order to overturn that, then you then now also need to go practicing another behavior. Is it possible to overturn that thinking?
It is, but it will take a lot of time and a lot of effort, because you see, what is learned can also be unlearned.
Indeed.
And therefore, if we've learned bad manners, we can reverse the process and say, where did the rain start beating us? And we'll realize that it is the very formation of the of society or the state called Kenya. Because from the Westphalia in 1648, we formed the states, and they were formed by practically crooks who had been fighting for 30 years. Then they realized, we've been fighting, why don't we share this cake? So they formed about 15 of them. I remember, if my memory is not wrong, it was in April 1648 that they formed the state. And therefore, those states now went ahead, started colonizing other states like us, Kenya, and many other countries in Africa were colonized by the British. So that formation of state was brought to us, and when we took over in 1963, we never tried to leave Kenya differently from the way the British was dealing with us. The president at that time was prime minister, akin to the British system. Now within a year, he was transformed into head of government and head of state, because they found it convenient to be the king and the prime minister at the same time.
Right.
And this is the bad manners we've inherited. And even when we were doing the 2010 constitution, we never took time to reflect on the paradigm shift that we needed to have. And that's why even devolution had some hitches at the beginning, because of that bad manners that we inherited.
At the beginning?
People thought that now I'm going to be the governor of Trans Nzoia.
Yes.
I'm going to be a mini president. And there were a lot of motorcades and funny stories being seen. People did not realize that this is to the people. We are devolving functions to the people so that there is closer administration and closer delivery of services at the grassroots.
You say that at the beginning of devolution, there seemed to have been a problem. So does that mean that you think that now, as devolution then is in its 10th year, that everything is all right?
It is not well, because we still got a lot of duplication of roles. You will find there is a county commissioner, there is a governor. Then you go down to the constituency, there is what they call county administrator. And there is the official appointed by the governor to do the same things. You go to the ward, you find there is MCA, county administrator, and there is a chief. That is duplication of roles. We've not been able to seamlessly devolve what can be done by the administration of the day within the county and what can be done by the central government. So that is still persisting. Number two is the paradigm shift that we needed to have. When you are made a governor by the people of that county, how much can you do for them? How much can you work with the government of the day, with the administration of the day, without necessarily behaving like you are a small king within a certain area of jurisdiction? You've been hearing about this challenge about whether the doctors should have their own commission or they should be employed by counties. That is still a problem, because governors believe they must have total control of what is going on in their counties without necessarily realizing that some things can be done better if there is some kind of helicopter view of the county vis-a-vis the rest of the country.
But Mheshimiwa,
yes,
where do you think the governors get this idea of wanting to have total and absolute control? Something which really is not honestly possible. But where do you think they get this idea from?
It is the same. We inherit bad manners.
You see, ask yourself the question.
Yes.
We're talking about the Constitution. We were having this discussion with Mheshimiwa Biti Zalachi.
Yes.
And I raised the same question. I'm raising it to you.
Yes.
If at the beginning of this devolution process, we had a transition authority, which was given 3 years. Then we had a commission for implementation of the Constitution.
Yes.
5 years. Now, I would have assumed 5 years down the line is when you'd have an idea of how this Constitution actually works.
Yes.
And then you can begin tweaking it in the next 5 years. Because it's an experiment.
Yes.
The two institutions that were supposed to shepherd this process ceased to exist.
But there's still another one.
Which one?
The technical committee.
Yes.
Intergovernmental.
Yes.
That at times I ask myself, what is it doing?
Yes.
But you know, my brother, the main problem is that you cannot legislate bad manners.
Actually,
You cannot legislate behavior.
Actually,
Yeah.
you can't. But what you can do, you see, the framework
Yes.
that limits it,
Yeah.
the framework that is a deterrent, that is what even the law does. The fact that you have the law, you're not going to stop you from committing crimes, but it's a deterrent. It's something that gives you pointers as to what you can do and what pointers and a reference point whenever you want to move forward. Now, my argument is this.
Yeah.
What we had was a three-legged stool. Now you move two legs and remain with one. What do you think this one leg is going to do? It's going to be a balance. They're going to spend more time trying to balance than actually steadying themselves and doing what they're supposed to do. So my perspective is that it appears that devolution, with all the benefits that we spoke of it, the moment the implementation began, those who came in sought to water it down as much as they possibly could. The previous government of Uhuru Kenyatta did. This government are even doing it in more earnest. So, devolution, a good thing, and we can see it's a good thing. But the very thing that would make it work and bring about what you're saying, accountability or good governance as the term is, that remains aspirational because the very tools in the constitution that was supposed to bring that about were watered down.
Yeah, because of the same thing. That's why this national conversation, at times you people call it national dialogue. I like calling it national conversation because dialogue almost is about two sides of an equation.
Right.
But for me, I think this should be multifaceted kind of discussion that all of us, including you professionals, the church and other individuals within our society, should be able to have dialogue and ask ourselves, can we first do an audit of the institutions that were formed by the 2010 Constitution, including the devolved system? Do we have the requisite resources on the ground? Do we have adequate staff in terms of the numbers? Or are we having people who have just been employed because they happen to have supported the governor or whoever is in office? You know, these are serious issues. At times somebody says we have 3,000 people who are employed by the county government. But I ask myself, are these 3,000 people useful to the county, or are they just drawing salaries and taking them away? And in the idle time, they spend conspiring on how to get some illicit money from the county, what you commonly call corruption. These are very important questions that we need to ask ourselves.
But aren't those just the questions, though, Mheshimiwa? We heard the president ask the question in Eldoret 2 days ago, and he asked the question, and then he came out and said, look, it is clear that corruption and mismanagement of funds is the bane of the existence of counties today, and that I'm giving out a warning saying that, look, for those of you who think that you're going to be able to do this, we're not going to let you get away with it anymore. But the truth of the matter is that it would appear as though it seems it is a tool for individuals to still enrich themselves. If it wasn't, we would not see the things that we see today. We would not see the crazy pending bills, number one. We would not see so many projects to the tune of 50 billion shillings having stalled. It's not little money. 50 billion shillings in projects having not been completed. We wouldn't see that if people were not out for their personal gain. We would not see project upon project not being sorted. We would not see students having wanted to go to another country to study and their money being taken. We would not see job scandals left, right and center. We would not see those things if it were not seen as a tool for personal expediency. How do we rid? Because if we're asking what devolution ought to look like, how do we rid then the counties of this image whereby it looks as though folks have just set up an opportunity for them to go and plunder?
Well, I'm not a religious man, but what I remember last time is that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
And you're not a religious man.
What I'm saying is that we are all guilty to the extent of the office that you hold. Why do I say that? I say that because it is important we ask ourselves, what is the perception of society. If they say Muga is going to be the governor of County X for 5 years, when he gets out, they expect him to have almost 3 homes in Nairobi and 2 homes within the county and another farm in another county, not realizing that he was earning only 1 million shillings. So 60 million cannot buy you more than 2 homes in Nairobi. It's just 1 home in a miserable corner of this town, because you cannot afford even to buy a plot in some of the areas of this town. So our perception as society is warped. We believe an office is an opportunity for us to eat, is an opportunity for us to get employed, so that anybody supporting a new governor candidate or a new MP candidate is looking for an opportunity to partake in the resources of the constituency or the county. It is something that we must remove from our social fabric. Otherwise, we are likely to have these reports and reports and reports. Because when you talk of stalled projects, you're very right. You find an outgoing governor has started project 1. The one that comes in does not want to continue with that. He starts another one because it's more lucrative to do that, starting with the purchase of land. So they will purchase the land and start doing another project. MPs, they do the same. MCS, they do the same. Those, whoever succeeds the other, does not want to continue with the other project because they will say, that one was started by so-and-so.
I need my own.
Such that you can have 2 dispensaries on either side of the road within the same ward. And you ask yourself, what is it going to be at the end of the day? So it is important that we look at this thing as a national disaster. We need to manage it, all of us. It is not the administration of the day. Even the government that will come after this one of President Ruto might do the same things. And I hope his intentions that he said that he is going to devolve the functions in 60 days is going to be supported by the technical people. Because devolving institutions within 60 days is not practical,
it's not feasible,
in my own estimation. Perhaps you would have said by the next financial year, because that means reallocation of resources, it means readjustment. And fundamentally, the problem with devolution is that functions went without the requisite human resource. And there were no even, regulations on how the first governors were supposed to do. They were given initially a 200 million.
They were thrown into the deep end, essentially.
Yes, the deep end, and they were told to swim. And for them also, they didn't have this thinking that now they have given me as the chief executive of this small area.
Okay.
Within a bigger nation called Kenya.
Sure. Let's take a break. We'd like to open that up just a little bit. 60 days to then devolve functions completely to the counties. How exactly is that going to work? It's 28 after 9 o'clock. Taking a break. We'll look at weather and traffic and come back and continue with this conversation. In the last few minutes of Kenya's biggest conversation, welcome to our audiences on KTN News as we continue with this conversation. Coming to the tail end of the week, where devolution has been in the mouths of everybody recently, looking at CIDPs, county integrated development plans, looking at annual development plans, looking at what then the administration in terms of an executive would want to happen in the counties over the next 5 years. In the 8th Devolution Conference that's coming to a close today in Eldoret, our guest this hour is Mheshimiwa Kipruto, Arap, Kirwa, and we're looking at why have we stayed where we have, or where we have reached with devolution in the country. You talk about certain things, corruption, you talk about mismanagement, you talk about the demigod status of executives at the county level. The president did then come in and say, look, the devolving of functions then needs to take place. He said 2 months it can happen. You seem to think that this cannot. And why is that?
Well, there are a number of things. One is that devolution of services needs devolution of resources. And I know the budget that they have, they can only do what we call supplementary estimates about March next year. That is about 6 months away from today. And therefore, we cannot expect within 2 months that all these functions will have gone to the county, because it will also be very rough. We need to rethink the process, like what I mentioned before. The doctors, the nurses, are they going to be part of county, or are they going to remain with the national government so that they are employed by the national government, but the services and the supervision is done at the county level through various arms of government and also developed systems? That is one question that we need to ask ourselves. Are they safer within the county, or are they safer within the national framework, so that issues of certification and promotion of individuals in various cadre we shall be done in a way that somebody in Siaya does not feel disadvantaged compared to somebody in Nyeri or in Garissa. These are some of the issues that we need to interrogate and ask ourselves, is it more effective to do it that way, or are we just going to do it the way we did devolution at the beginning of time, where governors were told 200 million, do whatever you want so that you can stabilize yourselves on the ground without the necessary advice. Some of the governors have never been administrators. You know, the most popular guy is not the most effective guy.
That's true.
Yeah. So you can be popular, but when you sit on that particular seat, you don't know where to start.
Doesn't also require then a devolution of responsibility and accountability? Because the thing that we can compare this to most is probably the federal system that you have in some countries. You have it in the United States, you have it in Nigeria, whereby in this demarcated area, the responsibility of the livelihoods of the citizens in the federal system, what is called a state, rests in the office of the governor and his or her deputy, right? You will get some assistance from the national government in terms of resources, but the main responsibility for making sure that things work administratively, that things work in terms of resources on the social level, health, education, etc., is vested in the office of the governor. So if we look at devolution, one would get the feeling or the thought that there is a certain amount of comfortability that still is in the hands of governors and their seats because of this thing that you mentioned. Resources will still come from the national government. Own source revenue, yes, all right, it comes in every now and then, but it's negligible when you compare it to what comes from national government. The responsibility also then, as you say, if the resources, he who pays the piper is the one who calls the tune. At the end of the day, if you're resting on what national government will do, the likelihood of you to become more innovative or creative or to become more responsible or accountable then reduces significantly, because you don't have to come up with your own money.
Yeah, there are a number of things. One is what I call timeliness. Even the resources that we say are going to the county, they are at times delivered almost 1 year later. The same counties, they enlist the contractors to do certain projects. And most of the companies buy small people who borrow 5 million from the bank to do a small road. And after 2 years, they have not been paid. What happens is that they are closed and businesses suffer and people run into depression. We've heard of many people who have run into depression. Some have even committed suicide because the very asset they had, like a house, they mortgaged, they went, they did the project, completed, but now the money was not coming from the county because the county had not received from the national government. And in the process, certain bills, when you hear these pending bills in the counties, some of it are monies owed to the banks. Because you see, if a county borrows from the bank to pay a contractor, the cumulative effect of that debt shall not be covered by any money that comes from the government in the subsequent years. And the revenue they collect goes through a lot of pilferage, because even the revenue collection, some of the counties at the beginning were collecting less than the county councils that preceded them. But now they have improved. I'm told some of them have superseded, some have doubled, some are on the upward trend. But we need to improve revenue collection on the ground. And we need to make it in a way that we were using under the old system, that ministry officers can collect money on the ground, but they have to submit, or we give them as appropriation in aid, so that if you collect 10 million, you can spend that money, but it must be documented that this is the money that you have collected from the ground to be reflected in the budget, so that you don't spend money without being budgeted by the national government, and that is the parliament, because that will be illegal money if you spend money without going through the process of legitimizing it in parliament. So these are some of the challenges, and they are genuine challenges. Some of the governors were very good because they were administrators before.
Yes.
But some of them were very naive. There are people who are politicians, some of them young people, some of them old people, but not all old people are good managers. But they are very good in speaking to the public. But when they get to the office, they almost run amok. And some of them are micromanagers. So either they want every voucher to be known. Why have you paid Muga? Why have you paid so-and-so? Why have you paid so-and-so? Why have you paid this contractor? Of course, part of it is for rent seeking, and part of it is because by inherent capacity, they are micromanagers. And there is nothing we can do about them. You can even train them, but they will not cease to be micromanagers because they don't trust anybody.
Mheshimiwa, when you get into parliament, how are members of parliament inducted? Because there are all these standing orders, God knows what, parliamentary etiquette. I mean, is there a school where you go to learn these things, or when you become a member of parliament, how do they induct people into all these things?
Well, at times some of it you learn by on the job.
You're sitting there and you learn as you go along.
Yeah, as you go along, you learn. Well, the best person who used to teach us standing orders was the late Martin Shikuku. He could tell, because you see, when you stand on a point of order, you must say a specific standing order that you are standing on. Is it about somebody's way they have dressed? Is it what they have said? So Shikuku was very good, and he was mentioning specific. And of course, even in parliament, when you repeat yourself, you are out of order.
You repeat yourself.
If you repeat yourself, you continue saying the same thing. You don't seem to be creating new content. You are not supposed even to read.
Oh.
Yeah. You can only read a statement
How
if you are a
do you know
minister.
all these things? Let me repeat the question.
Yes.
Are there formal sessions where people are told what to do and what not to do?
During my time, we did not have, but of course you are given standing orders. From time to time you are corrected, and you are excused for not knowing if you are a new member of parliament. But if you are a seasoned person, if you have done 1 term, 2 terms, or 4 terms the way I did, nobody will excuse you. But out of age, they can also respect you that mzee akumaanisha hiyo. Otherwise, you are supposed to learn.
But you see, the fundamental difference is here.
Yeah.
There are many of you in this house.
Yeah.
There are people who've been there before you.
Yes.
You have a prefect, they call it a speaker.
Yes.
There's a deputy prefect.
Yes.
These things, when you say you can imbue knowledge, in that ecosystem, you can.
Yeah.
But when you look at how government offices work, let's look at the former provincial administration. You come from university, you are a DO3. Before you get to 2 and 1, there are processes you go through, and there are even exams you sit, and there are trainings throughout. You go to the military, it is the same. You get to a certain level, there are certain exams you must do, you must pass, and then there's some more you're constantly being trained to assume more and more responsibility, and then you are given those responsibilities. Now, you are giving somebody an administrative job of a governor.
Yes.
His previous job was, he worked, now this is not to say I'm giving the NGOs a bad name, I'm simply giving it as an example, okay? Yes. You worked for some NGO that dealt with climate change.
Yes.
A very good thing.
Yes.
And you are good at what you do.
Yes.
But now you've been given this job of governor, where beyond just basic administration, you have to manage people, expectations, and everything about them in this vast area we're calling a county. Okay?
Yeah.
There is nowhere in that entire conversation where somebody pauses and is told, good, now you've been here for a month, let's walk you through some of the processes that you need to know.
For governors now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, because if you look at the presidency, The presidency is not that you go to school, but there's a structure. You will be told. There are people who will teach you and they will explain to you, and they'll make sure they'll tell you, Mzee, this one isn't done this way.
But are we saying that now? Because I don't want to take away from the gains that have been made in devolution. The truth of the matter is that because we've seen devolution in the way in which it has played out in Kenya today, that there are certain parts of the country that have been developed to a greater degree as a result of devolution that would not have been should devolution not have taken place.
Absolutely
right?
True.
Okay. But are we saying then that the county bosses need some kind of training to avert some of the things that we've seen today? For example, mismanagement of funds. What do you need training for you to be able to know that this is not something that you do?
Actually,
or that when corruption takes place at the county level, you need to hold on, Titi. That you need to then receive some kind of training in order for this not to happen.
You put it well, and you're absolutely right. That's not what I was speaking of.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm speaking of this general concept of responsibilities and how somebody manages responsibilities. You cannot give someone that amount of power and not prepare them for it. Because you're going to create a monster of a problem.
In fact, I agree with you entirely. Well, I have not had the privilege of being a governor.
but you are a minister.
Yes, I was a minister. And I think today, if I was given a choice, would you want to be a governor or a minister? I would say I want to be a minister. Why? Because in a ministry, you have systems already in place. You have structures. You have technical people.
Yes.
It is only you to provide the leadership. That is, if you are a minister. But for a governor, some of them, I think, started from the scratch with people that were also ill-equipped. And even the understanding of the word county, it was like, now, if we are the majority here, the rest of them can wait for their turn because this is our county. Because you see, and they made mistakes. They were done on the basis of tribes.
Catastrophic mistakes.
Yes. It was on the basis of tribes. The 42 of them were almost reflective of tribes that existed at that particular time. Of course, some tribes had more than one county. Some tribes were lumped in one county against their wish. That's why there is this talk that we should have 67 counties or 90 counties. So because every tribe, they feel they are safer with their own county, not realizing that it costs money to run a county.
And those tribes will have clans. Now those clans will want their own counties.
Oh yeah.
So where do you stop?
I don't know.
So what should it look like today? If we've come off of, this is the 8th conference now.
Yes.
Right? And every time there's a conference like this, the hope is that everybody goes back to their county with renewed vigor and says, okay, these are the plans, we've put them into place and that we're going to make gains going back. Some could argue that, all right, you come and you have this conference and you plan, but then those plans are not seen through. What should devolution look like?
Well, I want to join you and concur with the two of you that devolution has done tremendous work, but we could have done more if we were meticulous in how we were dispersing resources, if we were careful, realizing this is not our money, it is the money that belongs to the public. If we had realized that we can improve systems of delivery. Now, what I propose is that apart from governors spending time to realize that nobody knows everything, and the mistake they also make is that some of them think they know everything, even the things they don't know. Leadership is different from administration. Somebody can be a very good administrator because you are ordering people and that is your job. But when it comes to leadership, you must accommodate even the weakest within the county, whether it is in terms of ethnic consideration, whether it is in terms of individuals, even people of nuisance value. Listen to them. Because I've said before that leadership is the capacity to listen and to interpret the intentions of the speaker. So whoever is speaking to you wants you to listen first. Having listened to him, interpret his thoughts. They may be naive, but can you elevate them to a position that those thoughts are implementable within the framework of the county government? Number two, we need to train more of the people serving the county systems, including the CECs, the CEOs. They go through some training. But I think there is need for us to be having regular training like what we used to have as KIA, Kenya Institute of Administration. Many people who may have had modest education were able to be trained there. They learned how to run institutions. And some of them rose to the levels of ministers or even permanent secretaries within the system, despite the fact that they started with modest education. But that education was relevant, focused, and very specific to the functions of the office somebody is holding.
Politicians oftentimes run for positions of governor, right? And we've also seen, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, even if we call it like that, that politicians in positions of members of parliament, for example, will get into development projects, and what those help them to do is to propel them into a state of perpetuity, so that you will keep coming back because people have seen, you've done this, I will put you back based on that, right? So politicians will use that oftentimes to come back, and it's a double whammy because things get done, you get back into position, great. Now, when we look at devolution, what you're saying essentially is that the development agenda of a country then is put on the shoulders of each county administration. So you, with your little demarcation or big demarcation, then are responsible for making sure that development in every corner of the country takes place. Yes? Should those positions then have politicians at the helm? What do you think?
You know, who is a politician? Who is a politician? A politician is somebody who has run for office and he won. All of us are politicians. Do you know you are the best politician in town? Only that you have not run for office. Yeah. So the problem is that somebody runs for office, and when he gets there, he thinks is the best. At times, you are elected not because you are the best. You are elected because the rest of the guys had problems with their constituents. So the election at times does give sort of, it is a rejection of your opponent. And that's why we spend time making them look so bad, instead of saying how good we are. So all these individuals are politicians. It's only that some of them have not had the opportunity. Now, my take is that a pedestrian politician may not even have an idea of how to run systems, but they will win elections. You've seen some of them, they become governors for 2 terms. But when they want to go to lower positions, they are rejected because of the bad performance. But they knew how to manage the bigger county. But I want to agree with you on one account. The cumulative success of all the counties is national success. So that each county must succeed to a large extent. And if each one of them is performing at 80%, the country will also be performing at 80%, depending on other parameters. That I want to agree. And therefore, ignoring any part of this country in terms of what we are calling equalization fund and this talk, let us have this conversation, knowing that Kenya is better off if each part of Kenya is taken care of.
You know, you've actually hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Because we keep saying that the county system has brought changes that had hitherto not been known by some counties. It is true. But we are scratching the bottom of the barrel because we are comparing situations which were akin to nothingness to now slightly better. But the vision of what the monies that the counties have had could actually do is lost in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because 5 billion shillings is a hell of a lot of money.
It is. It is.
10.
Yeah.
And then every year you get this.
Yeah.
Now, the measure of what could have been done vis-a-vis what has been done, therefore demonstrating the shortfall. Now, that's why I'm saying you hit the nail on the head, because if indeed the monies were used for what was done, you are at 80, you are generous, let's say even 60%, the country would not be where it is now.
That's true. That's true. Because you see, my worry is that we have some kind of mismatch. And sorry, I'm using my own example. I served in my constituency for 4 terms. Of the 4 terms, the money that came directly to the constituency was on my last term as a minister. And if you compare the other 3 terms with what the last term, the money that I got the last term was more than 10 times the money that were there for the other 3 terms. I don't know. Possibly I'm confusing myself in this explanation.
No, I don't think you are.
Because CDF...
In your earlier terms, there was no CDF.
There was no CDF.
Yes.
And when CDF came, I remember the first CDF that we were trying was 6 million for every constituency. Mm-hmm. It went up. By the time I left, it was 35 million per constituency. Now it is 128.
8 million, yes.
So my worry is, if I was an MP even for one year, and I'm getting 128 million. Why is there no evidence on the ground
to show what to show 128 million?
And yet also the county has taken 6 billion. For example, Trans Nzoia, about 6 billion. So because Trans Nzoia has 6 constituencies, on average, I assume half of it will go to other services.
Yes.
So $500 million should be in every constituency, plus the other 100 million, 600 million in Cherangani constituency
every year
should make a difference.
It should make a huge
difference.
You should be able to see it. And so this is not what we're saying there. You know, it shouldn't just be in word.
Yeah.
That, oh yes, we did this.
No.
Look, if you've done something, you don't have to talk about it. We can see.
People will see.
In fact, the people who are under your leadership or guidance or whatever will then be able to see. They will even talk about it before you. So is this not a problem here that we keep complaining? Oh, the money is late. Okay, the one that came.
What did you do with it? Because it did come.
Yeah.
And also this matter that we keep talking about. See, these are times of ease. When I say times of ease, they aren't quite like the times when you first got into parliament. You see, one of the things that I'm glad you're here because I can now ask you directly.
Yes.
What is it that in a time when we were a single party state, you were able to stand up against the president of the time? What was going through your head?
Okay.
Munga, there's something that must have sparked this, and you said no.
I gotta try.
It starts. I cannot explain myself, but I can say when you are young, you have more courage. When you get to my age, you have grandchildren, children, and you are worried.
You're a little more careful.
You are more careful. Otherwise, what happens usually, and at times it is good to tell the president, because we have one in Kenya, that at times, even when people are fighting the system or telling the president this is too much, it is a product of funny consultations that goes on. There are people I call make-believe. Make-believe who behave as if you cannot get anything from the president, you cannot access any resources from the system unless you go through them. Those make-believe people are the ones who make the president unpopular. It is not those in the opposition. Even today, I can tell the president of Kenya, don't be worried about the opposition. Be worried about the people who are with you. Those are the people who destroy you. And they destroy you, and you become almost a hostage of their thinking, because they are not stupid. They have gone to school, perhaps better than you, and they know how to manipulate you and create a problem that it is this lady from Nigeria who is causing the problem.
Yes.
And they will describe you until that story becomes believable. Yeah, that's my worry.
And that's what you're fighting then.
I was fighting then, and I'm still fighting today.
So, I mean, it just coming through now to the last bit from you as we wind this down. So everybody goes home from Eldoret this week and then comes back to their offices next week to now start to continue. Is there hope that devolution, as it is currently constituted, will then be able to deliver development to the counties? Or is there some kind of dramatic shift?
We must rethink the system. We must re-engineer the system. We must agree to go through the painful surgery of ensuring that we have the workforce that is doing something. I feel we have bloated staff within all the counties. We have bloated staff nationally, and I've been insisting we need to do a human resource audit.
Kipruto, Arap, Kirwa, thank you for being our guest on this Situation Room this morning. It will be interesting to see how these conversations then develop into action over the next 4 years, and hopefully development will then reach every corner of this country as is required. And thank you for keeping it the Situation Room this whole week, coming to the last show of the week, and we come back Monday morning as we continue with conversations that affect the nation. August 26th, it takes us where? It takes us to City is already ready. City has arranged his 800 shillings. We are following him. Choma Nangoma taking place in Nakuru County this year. And at the Rift Valley Sports Club is where the very best of Kenyan artists come out for a night of fun, music, entertainment, and of course, cannot forget the Choma. Ticketsasa.com. Thank you, folks, for keeping it here this week. It's 10 a.m. See you on Monday.